Hey, it's Chris. Liege Games. So, Monster Hunter. Monster Hunter. Monster Hunter. Monster Hunter. The board game. Steamforge Games. It's out there. It's ending soon. Should you back it? Full disclaimer right now. At the time of me filming this video, I honestly do not know what I am going to do. But, hopefully, you can be a little less indecisive than I am at this point. Hopefully this video helps you be a little less indecisive. Let's talk about the pros, let's talk about the cons, let's go a general overview. The mechanics are out there. The gameplay examples are out there. I'm seeing heavy, very opinionated thoughts on both sides of things in both camps. Is it worth it? Is the value good? What are those unlocks doing? Where do you stand? What do you need to know to help make your decision? And who knows? Maybe along the way with this verbal diarrhea diatribe that I'm going to give you, it'll help me too. So, sit back, relax, let's take a few minutes, let's digest what they've got on the Kickstarter campaign. Let's do this. Look. It's at $3 million. Say what you want about it. Say what you want about Steamforge. First up, the one thing I give them a lot of kudos for as a pro, I give them credit where credit is due in terms of information. The most amount of information of any of their games by far and away, because it's almost like they knew this was otherwise going to get them some heavy criticism if they didn't. So, they've been slowly building up the hype, and they've got their designer diaries on their website. Here's their website. 22 of them so far, breaking down monsters, breaking down mechanics, breaking down the different hunters, breaking down how to interpret said graphics and said symbology within the game, how the mechanics are actually working them, breaking them down set by set. And as someone who is somewhat helped by gameplay videos, you can always check out the gameplay videos. But I think the first thing I would have you do is go check out my other video. And I'm not doing this for self-promotion, but I know a lot of you out there, if you have not looked at this, it really helps to know, okay, well, how are these mechanics working together? Because otherwise you go into watching a gameplay video and you go, oh, what are they doing here? Why are they doing this? Can I do this? How is this working? How is that? I don't quite I compiled as many of these as I could just prior to the campaign, put it all on like a 20 or 30 minute video. You put it through on 1.5, 1.75 speed. You're going to get more information there than hopefully anywhere else, if that's useful. But if you want to know about something specific, you go over to the blog here and you can pick out the one that you want. And I think, honestly, this has been very helpful because it gave me a lot of insight into the mechanics in the first place. And again, as a pro. Now, going back to the campaign here. Like you saw, look, I'm in right now. This is a ton of money. This is Primal equivalent, right? Again, to be very frank with you, I didn't think when Primal ended that this was going to be as much of a head scratcher, doing the do-si-do of whether or not I'm in or I'm out at this point. I got 1 foot in, I got my 1 foot out, I've got my 1 foot in, and I shake it all about. I don't know. And I'm still shaking that foot at this point. And that's terrifying. I have not had a game like this that's put me on edge in quite some time. In terms of should I or shouldn't I? Because I think all of us are very good. And I guess that speaks to the improvement, again, that Steamforged has done in terms of the transparency. Because a lot of us, myself included, I'm going to speak for myself here. I won't speak for you guys. I'm sorry. I was easily going to write them off because of past performances. Even the most recent Bard Song, which again, they had more information about. But when they finally released the rulebook, I looked at it and I said, I don't really want to play D&D the Dungeon Crawl. Even though you're doing some very cool things. And then I worried about, you have an IP here. Are you going to be just mishmashing whatever mechanics you can to fit the IP, or are you going to have mechanics that are thematically true that are also going to give you an interesting game? And therein lies the biggest crux and debate and dilemma that I find myself in at this point, because it is more solid than I expected. People's opinion that I trust, King of Average, Board Game Co., have said, hey, these guys really play different. This is distinctly different. This is a step up. But as with all previews, reviews, my own included, I say this on all of my own thoughts on these types of games. It could be a great game, but do not let it fall into the Gloomhaven trap or the Root trap. Because not only does it have to be a great game, more importantly, it has to be a great game for you. And that is the big question. I can easily, after reading the rules, doing the videos for Primal, I can see how that is going to be a great game for me. But this nodal system, the mechanics, the combination of the phases of the item crafting and the dice rolling for that and the cards, I just don't know. And again, I say that as a positive and a negative, because if Steamforged has not done an improved job, again, this would be a very easy conversation for me to say, you know what? Nope, sorry guys, this one's clearly not for me. You guys who love Monster World, you guys go all in. This is fantastic. You got some great miniatures. Hey, if you get a halfway decent game, there you go. But unfortunately, it exceeded my expectations. And I say that unfortunately because I don't really want to spend another $300. I just put out a video talking about all of the other big, massive games that are going to be talking about the cash between now and even the end of June. And there are some big whoppers out there with some big names, big IPs, and big concepts. And I'd love to be able to save my money for ones that I am absolutely certain of. But the other element of this, and we'll get to that, I'm going to skip ahead, spoilers, there's going to be FOMO with this. So what do you need to know? Let's just start at the beginning. I've rambled too much already. I'll probably delete half of that. Look, the pledge levels, already, straight up. Entry pledge level, worthless. Do not go for it. Do not go for it. They added one monster so far. They may add more in terms of the entry pledge level, but for the most part, they said all of the unlocks are not going to be included. If you're not going to include the unlocks, I see no reason to get the entry pledge level on Kickstarter, and you should be getting it at retail. There's no reason. If you're going to get it now as an unknown, you need to have a safety net. And the safety net in these games are the exclusives. So that leads you to the core pledge, and that leads you to the all-in. And both of those are going to have the login bonuses. The problem is the core pledge, which is $142. And again, to compare it to Primal, it's only $30 less than the buy-in for Primal with the core. But comparatively, you're getting less. And therein lies the problem. Therein lies the debate. I have been part of the groups on Board Game Geek and Facebook that people are popping up and saying, this is a bad value. This is a bad value. That is a purely subjective thing, because value is in the eye of the beholder. Value comparatively, perhaps, but value for you personally is what you need to look at. And so, if you're going for just the exclusivity of some of this stuff, it might be more manageable, because they also are allowing individual expansion add-ons, including the Kickstarter exclusive stuff, which again, I give them a little bit of kudos for, because when I saw these pledge levels, I looked at these pledge levels and I said, I'm fearful that this exclusive stuff is going to be gate locked, pledge locked, behind only that level. Sort of like what Simon did with Marvel United. You only got Warlock and Yondu if you got those higher two levels. You couldn't get a lower level and get those. Sort of like what Arena the Contest did with some of their big exclusive. You had to get the all-in to get those special high-tier things. And they were only campaign exclusive I don't even know if they offered them during the Pledge Manager. So you had to get it then. So I give them kudos because they did not do the easy temptation to get more people at this higher level of gate locking, pledge locking some of those expansions where you could not add them on. So again, I give them props and pro for doing that. Now, the other thing you need to know is this is a $151 difference right now. And you're getting the Hunter's Arsenal, you're getting the Kushala Daora, the Nirgante, and the Teostra. So you're getting those 4 extra expansions. And I can tell you already, without having to scroll down here, I'll do it anyway, video magic, that you are going to be getting a better deal. Because as you can see here, Kushala Daora, $60. Nirgigante, $50, 110 total right there. 150 total right there. Hunter's Arsenal, 190. So 190 versus $151 difference. So you are saving money. And you are getting some exclusives. Now, the question then ties into, and we'll talk about this a little later, those daily logins. I'm going to give them props because they didn't say that these are stretch goals. Now, syntax and wording matters because stretch goals would have been, I feel like, a lie. Because all of this is Capcom approved before the campaign. So none of this is truly stretched. If they raised 1 million, if they raised 5 million, Capcom's not probably gonna, give them extra approval, or something that is not already pre-approved is going to show up. So the transparency with the wording there, I appreciate. Say what you want, they're still hype, they're still going to be in there no matter what. It's to get people to keep coming back and to consider upping their pledge. But, whatever. Now, when we start talking about some of the differences, when we start talking about the monsters themselves, because ultimately, the monsters and the heroes, that is the crux of things, right? On one hand, you need to know what the differences are there, and then the other, you need to know what makes them special, what makes them unique. How is that going to affect the gameplay? How is that going to be mashed together? And are those elements going to work for you? Along with that is the map with the nodal system. And along with that is this iconography that they have broken down. And now, honestly, I was initially put off on the iconography, but with the explanations, it makes sense. It's not intuitive, but once you get it explained to you once or twice, you can repeat it and read it with relative ease. It's not as easy as I would like, again, but it is what it is. Now, I do like, and I give them a credit, the staying true to the IP. I had to look this up. This is what it looks like in the game. Being able to target those certain areas. Again, I think you're playing off the nostalgia of sort of the KDM as well, right? That translated to the tabletop, being able to damage those areas, get certain parts based on those areas, affect the abilities of said creature based on damage to those areas. None of these are new concepts, but they are well tested and well approved concepts. They are enjoyable concepts. I think this game ultimately is a little bit more press your luck than Primal. And I say that only because of the way the card system works, the way your damages stack up, the way you are trying to combo while staying out of range of the monster, because the monster is going first. And the monster has significant range on the map. And having to use those cards to potentially avoid instead of being able to attack on your subsequent turn. And the nodal system, I don't know how I feel about it. It's more like a hexagonal grid. I'm sure there's differences overall if you did a breakdown, but ultimately I think it's very similar because of the directionality in which you can go. Now, do you like directionality? Because Primal took a lot of flack initially for being the 4-quadrant type of thing, where you can attack from behind, you can attack from the side, you can, do whatever you need to do there, and the monster is reacting and having special abilities or ways of defending itself depending on where you're attacking from, and it can only be hit vulnerability-wise in certain areas at certain times. Now, obviously, this has an element of where you can hit the certain areas, but I don't think the spacing tactically from an attacking standpoint is as important. From a defensive, you can argue that it is more important in terms of knowing whether or not the enemy is going to be attacking the nearest hunter, the farthest hunter. If it's going for the farthest hunter, then you need to make sure that you are not in the path of the monster that they will take to get to that person in the first place. Yes. So overall, if you want more of that spatial element, this will provide it. To what extent, though, I don't know, because a lot of the monster's attacks seem to have a very good range, at least the ones that they showed on the blog here. The other concerning thing is the balance. These attacks are doing 2, 3, 4 damage each, and you have the ability to combo them, but some of these monsters are 50, 60, 70, 80 health points. And although with some of the gameplay you see it taken down rather quickly, is it going to translate that, especially when you're fighting at the lower level without some of those upgrades on some of these hunters? Are the hunters, when you have 14 classes of hunters, how well are those going to be balanced? And how is that dynamic? Because these monsters have the ability to 1 or even at worst 2-hit KO a hunter. Again, much different, much more extreme than Primal. And is that a positive or a negative? Do you like to dance on the edge of a sword? If you do, this game is probably more for you. If you want a little bit of flexibility in that sense, but still with the difficulty, Primal was probably your better choice. The variety and the type of the hunters here is without a doubt probably better than Primal. I say that, you might think that's a little controversial. As I said, with Primal, you've got like your 6 classes. And I worry about those classes being different enough. I think they're going to be, but I do have that worry. In this, you have a hunting horn, a huge freaking club, a lance, a hammer, a gun lance, a long sword, a light bow gun, and all of the other ones up here. 14 different ones. That's a lot. And they're going to be different just by the nature of some of those words I just used. Period. Same thing with the monsters, although you have many dragons. And that was a little bit of the mystery with Primal. We did not see some of the more extensive differences that led people, especially with some of the expansions, wondering at the end even, how different are these? Do I need the all-in? And I won't lie, that crossed my mind too. So that's something to consider. And let's be honest here, again, with all of these Kickstarter campaigns, whether it's a CMON, whether it's Awakened Realms, whether it's this, the money is made with the expansions. You are not going to be getting the value, whether it's this or even the recently ended Mythic Battles Ragnarok. You are not going to be getting nearly as good value with the expansions as you are with the core of whatever it is. You're not. But you're paying for the larger experience. These have 5 levels of monster difficulty as opposed to 3. And you're paying for the exclusivity here, right? Because last time I checked as well, Steamforge's games on their website are not less than what they are in Kickstarter. So you can probably guarantee that it's going to be more than what this price is going to be. So from a pure value standpoint, if you want to just skip over that for a second, unless this comes and is just derided, and I don't think it is going to be that way. I think of the two right now, Primal has the higher ceiling. It probably also has the lower basement. I think this is looking very solid, but I can't tell you right now that this is going to have a higher ceiling based on some of those mechanics that I've mentioned. The hunters, the nodes, the balance. I think this is ultimately a little safer bet in terms of gameplay. In terms of value, Primal probably, because of the more stuff you're getting. And so if it's stuff, Primal. If it's this is solid, I'm probably not going to have as big of a letdown because it appears that Steamforged has been improving on their design. As I've heard other people say, this is maybe what Dark Souls should have been with the nodal system. Then you might be looking at this more strongly. We get to the unlocks. The login bonuses. We're at the login bonuses. I've been thinking this one over pretty extensively now. they seem to be going in a certain pattern, as many people have started to speculate, that what you're going to see is alternative sculpts for all 4 of the starting characters in the base game that you're getting in the entry level pledge. And then you're going to end up with 4 of these palicos with the different armors. That's 8, 2 alternative monster cards as well, and that's your 10. So my bottom line is, even if they're wrong, even if they're right at this point, my advice at this stage of things is, if you are waiting to see what all these login bonuses are, and that is going to be the make it or break it for you on this pledge, on this campaign, on this game, I would say right now, honestly, just pass. Because what we have seen so far, relativistically speaking, compared to what is being offered in the packages of the pledge levels, especially because, let's be real here, we're talking the majority of people doing the all-in, the quantity there versus the quantity in the pledge, it's not that significant to make it a make it or break it. It's not. When I think of that sort of thing, that is a CMON level, where you are getting that much in the stretch, the exclusives, that sort of thing on top. You know, with my Marvel United pledge, I got literally 33 heroes, 11 extra bad guys just from the stretches, which is pretty much the sum of almost every other model expansion-wise, and maybe even core together. That is not the case here. And so if that is going to be the make it or break it for you, cancel your pledge right now. Because you are most likely, unless they pull a complete 180 on us, not going to happen here. And I don't say that as a negative. I say that as, like I mentioned earlier in the video, Capcom has probably pre-approved all of this stuff. It is going to be relatively straightforward. I don't think we're going to see any huge surprises. And if I'm wrong, hey, that's even better, right? But assuming I am right, assuming other people who have speculated that are right, that's what you're going to be expecting. And I'm okay with that. Like, so be it, you know? It is what it is. Not every campaign I back is like that CMON for Marvel United. Because the crux of it is, it doesn't matter how many of those figures I got from Marvel United, to stay with that example. If I don't like the way the game plays, it doesn't matter if I have 11 more bad guys, 57 more heroes, and 67 locations. If I don't like the mechanics, I don't have fun playing it, abort. And so if you're waiting for something that is going to change your tune in the login bonuses, if you're already feeling iffy on the gameplay, I think you already know your answer. When we're talking about some of the combat, though, listening to King of Average talk about it. Now, a couple of the recent updates with the super dragons, you know, the boss dragons, the up to 5 level difficulty dragons, are going to add some potential variation to the monsters, because his big criticism, which I think is right on point, is that the monsters themselves are not very unique in terms of their actual mechanics. Now, the attacks, and, you know, this one does 6 damage and has range 2, this one has 1 range and, you know, does 10 damage. That was very similar, he said. But the crux of what they were doing was one guy attack, move here, attack, move here, attack, move here, attack. It does not, with some of the at least base game monsters that they were playing, have the unique, ingenuitive mechanics that where KDM, you have a drastic different approach, because these guys act in completely different manners. You know, all of a sudden they blow you all to one side of the board and then they cut it one half. Or they cluster you all in the center and then they, you know, mass attack you that way. Or something unique with the terrain, or laying more things down onto the board that you're going to have to be able to interact with or avoid. One of the new Dragon expansions adds just that. Teostra has this supernova ability that puts down this black dust onto the board, and if you are on it, you take extra damage. if there are enough of them down, he does this super massive supernova attack. And this is where the other criticism is, and the other difference, maybe more of a difference than a criticism actually, is that, like I mentioned earlier, the combat can be very swingy. These monsters have a very strong presence to just knock you out in one hit with some of these attacks at even the lowest of levels. It is a little bit more of a slobber knocker to me than, I would say, the more nuanced tactical dance of Primal. And don't get me wrong again on this, I'm completely okay with that. I think of it Primal in that sense versus Monster Hunter, very akin to, let's go back to Simon here, my Rise of Moloch versus my others. Rise of Moloch is very strategic with a large tactical element. The others is blunt, smash, go. And I'm not saying they're exactly the same in that, but it sort of gives me that slight difference. And which of those is more appealing to you? Personally, I like them both. But if I had to choose one or the other, I know which one personally I'm going with. The other thing I think you have to be aware of when you're talking about these monsters, for example, is the AI system is not as interactive. It is not as smart. It is not as adapting as Primal. There's also probably less upkeep then. And that's okay. But what do you want to do? Where do you want to spend your effort? How nuanced, how much of that do you want to have? If you want more, Primal has it. Stances, perils, all these behavior cards, the reactions to what you're doing. It has it in spades. The difference of the monsters of each and every one of these. Monster Hunter? If it does, we haven't seen it yet. We've had little glimpses now with these expansions. But if that's one of your selling points, I'd also expect to see it more up front as well, right? Like, if that's one of your big features, show me. Show me a big feature. Show it to the guys who have hands-on prototypes, right? And I just don't see it there right now. And again, that's not to say it isn't going to be there. But for me to invest this much money, because let's be honest, it's an investment, am I willing to put that down with the hope rather than the actuality of it? If you are living on hopium with this one, then absolutely. If you're less sure of it, you got to Marie Kondo it, right? And that, I think, is going to be the ultimate test for me personally. What else am I going to not get if I get this? How many pledges for other games am I not going to get that are coming up in the next 2 or 3 months that I'm more sure of than this are there going to be? If there are very few, again, I think this is going to be solid, like I said earlier. But can I guarantee it's going to be spectacular? No. I don't think you can. Would I be surprised? No. It has the great elements that I've not seen in some of their other games. But having the elements and putting those elements together and making it cohesive and making it all flow and making it all be balanced, like I said, between all of the different classes, all of the different monsters, all of the different quests, all of the difficulties. When you have 5 levels of a difficulty of one monster, it's a lot. It's a lot. It's going to take a lot. And do you trust them to be able to do that? Whether this is one of your favorite IPs or you've never heard of it in the first place. So where does that leave me right now? Where does that leave me? With all that conversation, with all that talk, I don't know, honestly. The FOMO is very strong with this one. These massive, massive mothers of miniatures. And the price point are all very tempting. Even for the cat. This is going to come down right to the wire, no lie. This is probably the hardest Kickstarter for me personally in the last year or two about whether or not I'm going to back it, period. Because of all of those variables that I've mentioned. And you have to ask yourself, the bottom line with a lot of these that fall into this category, if this game is good, am I going to be upset that I missed it? Or am I going to be more upset if this game is not so good to my liking and I backed it? Which of those two is going to be more upsetting to you? And use that to figure out your answer. Because this one strikes right here from that side of things. So, what do you think? Which way are you going? How do you feel about it? I mean, personally, again, if you're going to go for it, you go big. Or you at least get all the exclusives. That is the way to do these campaigns. And that means a lot of money. And money is scarce. Money is limited. So, there you go. That's it. Ultimately, if you're going to say yes to some things, you're going to say no to others. Is Monster Hunter World worth you saying yes to and no to other things? Or no to it so you can get other things because we're talking a significant chunk of change? It's a tough one. It's a tough one. I would be happy to hear your thoughts. I know this is a divisive one as well. People feel very strongly one side or the other. But, as always, let me know in the comment section below. Thanks for taking the time to watch this. Thanks for taking the time to put up with me. If you liked it, subscribe. Maybe more where this came from in the future. But, as always, either way, thank you. I'll see you around. Stay classy.